Good morning. Bom dia a todos. I have to say I'm very excited to see everyone here in our offices at Shutts Bowen this morning. It's been a little while since we've had a big event like this here, and it's just wonderful to see so many familiar faces and new faces as well. And we're always happy to collaborate with the chamber. My name is Greta Trotman. I'm a partner here in our financial services group at Shutts Bowen. And we're a full service law firm. Other of my colleagues are here, including Gustavo Oliveira from our tax group. And we've been hosting this event with Ambassador Rubens Barbosa here at Shutts for some time. And today we're very, very happy to also have the Consulate General of Brazil here, and Cássio will further introduce him. But it's my pleasure to serve on the board of directors of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce of Florida with Cássio Segura, who is a former president of the chamber and now is the vice president of the chamber, and he will be introducing our illustrious guests today. Without further ado, I would like to pass this along to Cássio Segura.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Thank you, Greta. I'm Cássio Segura. Currently, I'm the board member and vice president of the chamber. So, on behalf of the board, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our talk today, that is Outlook for the New Administration in Brazil, featuring Ambassador Rubens Barbosa. Welcome, Ambassador, one time more. Our special thanks are extended to our supporters. Thank you, Shutts, for always hosting the breakfast here in your beautiful office. Thank you, the Brazilian Consulate General, Acheiusa Newspaper Raya3. We also welcome our new members. For those of you that is participating for the first time, we encourage you to join the BACCF. That's the largest binational chamber of commerce of the Americas in South Florida. So please feel free to speak with Larissa. Mary is there if you want more information. Before welcoming Ambassador Rubens Barbosa, it's my honor to welcome and invite to say some words here Ambassador André Odenbreit Carvalho, Consul General of Brazil in Miami.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to open the agenda for 2023. Let me congratulate BACCF for the excellent standard of our meetings and also of our guest speakers. We are joined today by Ambassador Rubens Barbosa, one of the key references in the Brazilian Foreign Service, notably on issues such as international trade, Brazil-US relations, but indeed on the full scope of the economic and political agenda. And this reference goes beyond Itamaraty, affecting the Brazilian public debate as a whole. It's a great opportunity today to hear his thoughts on the outlook for the new administration in Brazil. It's important to be brief in opening remarks, but on touching the topic of the outlook for the new administration, I must address the terrible anti-democratic attacks that took place in Brasilia on January 8th. Brazil's institutions have responded to the vandalism and the violence, protecting the nation's democratic foundations. And these institutions will continue to defend peace and progress in Brazil, strengthened by the robust and unanimous support received from our international partners. Thank you.
So, thank you, Ambassador André. the Ambassador Rubens Barbosa asked me to summarize his resume because instead of it talk more than himself. So that's really such a accomplishment. So Ambassador Rubens Barbosa, with a master's degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science, Ambassador Rubens Barbosa has held a variety of posts in government and foreign affairs. Secretary for International Affairs of the Ministry of Economic, Brazilian Permanent Representative to the Latin American Integration Association, ALAD, Under Secretary General for Regional Integration, Economic Affairs and Foreign Trade at the Ministry of External Relations, Coordinator of the Brazilian Section for Mercosul, Brazilian Ambassador to the Court of St. James from January 1904 to June 1999, Brazilian Ambassador to the United States of America from June 1999 to April 2004. He is also author of several articles, essays, and books. Currently, Ambassador Barbosa works as a business consultant, and also he is honorary president of the Upper Council of Foreign Trade for Federation of Industries of São Paulo State, Fiesp. He is one of the leading interlocutors between industry and government in the capital of Brazil. He's a member of the board of the São Paulo State Symphony Orchestra, of the foundation, also of the Foundation Padre Anchieta, TV Cultura, and CSU, Credit Card Administration Company. Please, if you can turn off yourselves or put in a mute. So I would like to give the room for our Ambassador, Rubens Barbosa.
Morning. It's a new pleasure to be here again. It's I think the third, fourth time I come to Miami and had the opportunity to speak here. This time, when I was invited to speak, I thought I had an easy task because the beginning of the new government was predictable, and we could see what was the way it was going to lead the economy and the politics and the social matters in Brazil. But since last week, this easy task became an impossible mission. But anyways, I will try to make some comments about what is happening in Brazil, and then I will mention some of the policies, the trends that we are beginning to see in the first measures that were taken by the government. First, a few general comments on what's going on in Brazil according to my section. First, I think that the polarized politics will continue. It's amazing. I've been in Washington for 5 years, following what's happening here in the States. And it's amazing to follow in Brazil what's happening there because of the similarities that you see in US politics and Brazilian politics. It's amazing. I'm not going to get into details, but Brazil is as divided as the United States, as you know. So the polarization of politics in Brazil started in the speeches at the beginning of the government. It started with a very strong speech by the former vice president and now senator, Mourão, very strong speech about the opposition to the government. And from last Sunday, the riots in Brazil. And I'm not going to get into details about the motivations. Afterwards, you will ask questions. I will go into detail. But what's important to retain is that, like here in the States, what we have there is an ideological division and the existence, like here, of radical right groups. The 2018 election, in my view, was remarkable progress in the political spectrum in Brazil. For the first time, you had someone who accepted that he was a leader of the right conservative group. In Brazil, until 2018, nobody assumed the role of a right-wing politician. Everybody was center-left. Even Maluf said that he was center-left. Now you have a clear right-wing conservative in the economy, in costumes, cultural views. And this, after Sunday, is going to create greater turbulence, I think. And it will have political consequences on governability. I think that this speech about pacification, unity in the country, like you have Biden here, Lula started repeating this. I think that now will be very difficult to advance. We will see the division of the country, polarization for foreseeable future. Then this is the first comment, the polarization, well, politics will continue. Second, the honeymoon is over. I thought at the beginning that the honeymoon would be short, but now I can say that the honeymoon is over. In terms of opinion polls, Lula is over 52% approval, Bolsonaro 40-something. But you have, according to the polls, 20% in the right, 20% in the left. Hardcore, very tough group. So these groups, radicals, what happened in Brazil was representatives of this radical group. So Lula will have to take very tough political decision. And he's saying that he will do that, legal actions against those who took part in the riots in Brazil, those who finance it, those who stimulate it. And now they discovered documents there, and they are to prosecute the former minister, Justice, Bolsonaro's Minister of Justice, who is here in the States. He's coming back today to Brazil. So this will increase the radicalization, because it's not only politicians who will be affected, but also businessmen in the agro business area, especially in the agro. And in Mato Grosso, Pará, in the more radical areas. And from 2 days until today, I had to change my presentation to include another difficulty, the military difficulty that is today, I think, is the more serious question the government is facing. Because in Brazil, the situation, especially what Lula said yesterday, you must have seen about how he sees the military, poses a very important question that has been avoided in the last 100 years since the Republic in 1889, which was a coup d'etat by the military. The Republic was a coup d'etat by the military. And we have a number of other military interventions along the last 100 years. And the question that we have to discuss now is a question that is also present here in the States. I read a letter by 8 former Secretary of States and 5 chiefs of joint staff about their control, civilian control over the military. This is an issue here in the States, and it's an issue in, I think that we'll have to discuss. We have avoided so far, but what the situation there now poses this question. We have to discuss this because what happened in the last week, in the last 5 or 6 days, in the relationship between the military and civilian, is the mistrust, desconfiança, the mistrust between the presidency and the armed forces. And this is impossible to continue. We have to face the question. So the polarized situation is going to continue. The honeymoon is over. We have a new agenda. If I had spoken to you last week, I would say that the agenda is the economy, reforms, tax reform, and social programs. Now, I think that the events of last Sunday changed completely the agenda. The agenda today is defense of democracy. Right here, the rule of law and the strengthening of the institutions. So only yesterday, 5, 6 days after Sunday, yesterday, I'm going to mention this later, the finance minister set out an agenda, an initial agenda that on the economy, because the agenda was occupied by the concern, the institutional concerns, democracy, institutions, the position of the military, and what will be done in relation to the former president and other members of his government. A fourth point, and I think that this is crucial, is to know in the coming weeks and months if Lula can control the Workers' Party. This is the problem. Because in my view, Lula didn't win the election. The election was won by a group, centrist, moderate group, that after the first round, when Lula won, and there were clear signs, I'm not going to here, of a threat to democracy, this centrist group decided to support Lula. They're not Lula supporters or party PT supporters. They were bulk of this new support came from people that were against Bolsonaro. This is the reality. So, Lula said before taking office that this would not be a PT government. We go further, including the centrist group, personified by Simone Tebet, minister. What we see at the beginning of the government is that the Workers' Party is at the center of several controversial issues, and the Workers' Party leadership is very influential. And I'll give you two or three examples of what I'm saying. First, right at the beginning, the second day in the government, the finance minister wanted to put an end of federal tax breaks in fuel, as you know. And the Workers' Party was against, because they feared that this would affect the popularity. And the Workers' Party won against the finance minister, and the tax break was not possible. And they continued for 2 months to keep the tax break that was created by Bolsonaro. Second example, new ministers, the labor minister, the social security minister, spoke about reforms in the labor reform, in the social security reform approved by Temer government. And Lula had to say that this was not in the agenda. So it was a pressure from the Workers' Party. And third, the question of the military. The radical, theological PT group is demanding the ousting of the defense minister, and that he is conflict with the military. And if this happens, there will be we will have a huge crisis, because there's no alternative today to the attitude of the defense minister. If there is a change and someone from the Workers' Party takes up the Minister of Defense, we'll have an immediate crisis with the military. So these three examples show how the relationship between Lula and the Workers' Party is crucial. If the Workers' Party prevail, when the tier view in the government prevails, I think that we're heading to a crisis there. If Lula manages to control the Workers' Party, and the situation will be difficult, but he will overcome this situation. These are the 4 points, general comments I would like to mention. And now in the second part of this brief talk, I will speak about the challenges for the new government, as I see it, and how the first measures announced show they're going to end in the political and economic area. In politics, Lula created 37 ministries to accommodate these new allies. There is what we call a coalition government. And as I mentioned, how this will clash with PT agenda. So the question of governability will face challenges. First, Lula tried to tackle this in the beginning, improving the relationship with the Congress and the judiciary. And what happened last Sunday helped very much. This situation is easier now for Lula. But the number of ministries, 37, 11 with the PT members, 11 without parties, and 15 ministries made by members of different parties. It's very difficult to coordinate, very, very complicated. And I will just mention a few areas. If you're interested, you can discuss later the details. The coordination between the finance ministry and the Ministry of Industry and Commerce that was created. The coordination between the Ministry of Environment with Marina Silva and the Ministry of Agriculture, for instance, is another problem. The relationship with the governors of the states would be more complicated than it is now because of the crisis on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, there was a meeting with 27 governors. So, and then there was another meeting with the governor of Rio and another meeting with the governor of São Paulo. And so the situation that could be tense will be a bit better in the relationship with the states. And the reforms that were promised during the electoral campaign are not being discussed. The Ministry of Finance said that first reform that would be implemented in the Congress is the tax reform. I think they have no alternative. They will have to do that. But the events last Sunday delayed this. And in terms of the governability, the last point I mentioned is the question of the authority of the president. In relation with the military. Because the authority of the president in relation to the other powers, Congress and the judiciary, is I think that is already settled. Because you have an election to the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate. But I think that this will pose no problems. But the authority in relation to the military is a big challenge to the president. In terms of the economy, so this is politics, this is governability. In terms of the economy, yesterday, as you probably have seen, that closed a package, economic package. The idea is to reduce the fiscal deficit, which is good. I think that they are limiting those measures to 2023. We don't know how they are going to reduce the fiscal deficit in 24 and 25 and 26. But this is important. The debt renegotiation, this proposal is a good step forward. My doubts about the success of this policy, that the measures we announced yesterday are focused only on revenues, increasing revenues to reduce the deficit. But there is no mention about expenditure, how they are going to either keep the expenditure at the same level or to reduce expenditure. So we'll need to see if this ambitious target, because we said that we're going to be near zero in relation to GDP, the deficit. So the announcement yesterday was important. There was a good reaction in the market, but it's important. The reaction since the beginning of the government, not in relation to this, to the measure of yesterday, the perception of the economists, especially the liberal economists, number of them and very outspoken vision papers, is that the question you just mentioned, that they don't see the government willing to control expenditure, especially because of the nature of the social programs that have been announced by the government, and also concern about the weakening of fiscal rules that Lula keeps insisting. He said that the social responsibility has nothing to do with fiscal responsibility. This is a political approach to the problem, not an economic one. This is one point. There's a second point is the role of the state. I think that the Workers' Party, the previous government, Lula's 1 and 2 and Dilma 1 and 2, they strengthened the state, the role of the states. And now we don't know what they're going to do. And Lula said that he would be focused on previsibility, credibility, and responsibility. This is good. How to do it? With the pressure from the Workers' Party. Third, in terms of the economy, is you mentioned how the government is going to act in relation to the legislation related to labor, social security, and tax. If they try to change the labor and the social security, there will be a very strong reaction, negative reaction from the market. And if they go ahead with the tax reform, this will give a good positive signal to the economic agents, players in Brazil. I think that the challenge in the economy, the challenge for next year is huge in terms of growth, inflation, and interest rates. So you're following this, and then you're beginning, you see beginning signal that this year the economy will not repeat the good results of 2022. You know, Brazil grew next to 3%. Last year, inflation was down, and interest rates being reduced. But depending on the political situation, on the situation abroad, central bank in Brazil will have to take measures that will impact on the interest rates, on inflation. This will have a repercussion on growth. I think that contrary to what is being said by the government, it will be very difficult for Brazil to grow at the same level we managed to do last year. We have to see. I had mentioned here, I feel like I'm not going to get into details, I'm just going to mention to you some of the challenges that were mentioned during the campaign. This fuel cost, as I mentioned, will have in 2 months, they'll have to make a decision. The arms control, this is another big problem. Government will face a tremendous opposition, and they have revoked a number of executive orders and will change legislation about this. This is another challenge. Legislation on state-owned companies. The Workers' Party wants to change, to reluctant to this. This is a problem that you have to monitor. Privatization is out. Lula said that against privatization. We'll have to see what will happen with the framework in relation to sanitation, ports, cabotage, postal navigation. We'll have to see what will happen in the legislation regarding environment and climate change. And it's skeptical. I think that we're going to have trouble here with the agro business, the Ministry of Agriculture. One very positive initial posture of the government is in relation to foreign policy. Really, what is being proposed by Lula is beginning to be implemented by the Foreign Ministry. What is very positive, the first and most important result of the new foreign policy is the Brazil, as Lula said, is back in the world. The credibility will be improved. But the measure what happened last Sunday, it's a big question mark. How the world will see these changes in Brazil. The last two to three references I make in terms of the challenges for the government, I'm not going to details as well. First is the question of the relationship with the opposition. As I said, I don't think that this will be peaceful. I think that this will be very conflictive. This will be, especially in the Congress, the opposition will be very strong. And the opposition in the streets is what we saw last Sunday. I think that this will be repeated because of these radical rightist groups. We saw that there were transmission line towers that were destroyed in Paraná and Roraima. There were movements in São Paulo and other cities to block the roads. And so this is going to be the opposition. It will be the first time that the Workers' Party will face a tough opposition, because the PSDB, the Social Democrats, were not actually an important opposition to the Workers' Party. But now the Bolsonaro's followers and the rightists will be a very important opposition to the government, both in the Congress and in the streets. The second challenge is the relationship with the military, I have already mentioned. I think that this has to be taken very carefully. Otherwise, it will get out of control, and it's very difficult to foresee what could happen here. And the third is the question of corruption. I think that this will be a very important question. It's not being discussed there, but the opposition will focus on every move of the government. At any sign of any problem there will be an outcry. There will be a big fuss about that. This was one of the points that Lula is criticizing. What's happening in Salon, so this is a very sensitive position of how to evolve the relationship with the military and the question of corruption. In conclusion, now we are in a moment, I think that this will last for a month or more, in which the government is making gestures to defend democracy, to strengthen institutions. I think, contrary to the liberal assessment by the economists, by politicians, I think it's too soon to make a final assessment about the success of the new administration in the economy. The second and third level personnel appointed to help the ministers, most of them are technicians, good technicians, young, some of them without any experience in government. So we don't know how they're going to tackle these difficult issues and what will be the behavior of the whole ministry, because 37 ministries is a big too much. So it's too soon to say that no, then this is not going to work, and this is the end. I'm very try to be more cautious and wait at least for the first 100 days. I want to ask the ministries to prepare measures to be announced implementation in the first 100 days. Let's see what they're going to prepare and propose to see if they can manage to advance. As I said, I think that the political position will be as strong as never before. And this is a component when you analyze what's going to happen in the future. I think that the new focus on environment, both in the ministries of environment, in the foreign policy, in the economic policy, in the industrial policy, this is very positive and opens new opportunities for business in Brazil and even in industry. And if you want, we can discuss this. I think that here in the States, there are many opportunities to develop business in Brazil in a few areas. The modernization of industries in Brazil, the question of environment, equipment, and a number of the carbon markets. And there are good opportunities of developing business in Brazil. And finally, doing business in Brazil, as always, not easy. Antônio Carlos Jobim, the famous musician in Brazil, said, and I like to repeat, Brazil is not for beginners. And now this is very true. Brazil is not for beginners. And we'll have to see how the risks and opportunities happen for the business community. I think that I'll stop here and I'll be pleased to answer a few questions. But before I answer the question, I would like to mention something that may be of interest for you. It has nothing to do with the broad scenario I discussed here. Just for your information, if you want afterwards, Chamber has my directions, you will get in touch with me. Just for your information, we are beginning now in February an important business center near São Paulo, in a city called Indaiatuba. It's an hour and a half from São Paulo, near Campinas, near Jundiaí. And this is a huge thing that I'm coordinating. We don't depend on the government. We are doing this with the support, financial support of companies, local companies based on that region. Only in Indaiatuba, there is over 1,100 companies based in that region. If you include Jundiaí and Campinas, you size the number. And the business center will help big companies, medium-sized companies, small companies to do business abroad. We have some companies there with business in the States, and we're going to help both in import and export and in internationalization. So I just leave this information with you. If someone has any problem there, the business center can help. And I'm sure that we're going to develop business here because we know that the companies there have interest in expanding, enhancing their relationship with the United States. And as far as I am concerned, I will stress that they will have to do business with a few states here, especially with Florida. So with this, I thank you very much for your interest in that. I'm happy to answer questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you. As always, Ambassador Barbosa has a very strategic view about Brazil, so that's important. So we have time for questions, so the floor is open. Larissa has the microphone there, so feel free to make any question in Portuguese or in English, the way you prefer to speak. Mauricio, our board member.
Okay, good morning, Ambassador. Well, first of all, I'd like to praise BACCF for such an amazing event. This is cannot be a better time to hear such an outstanding person like you. So it's a gift for the Brazilian and US community, to all BACCF members. I came to this event, Ambassador Barbosa, with many questions. Well, I'm sure that many people here have many questions and based on your challenges. I'm trying to summarize at least one broad question, one specific. The broad one is, let me start this. Investors, whoever they are, and wherever they want to go, they look for three things: juridical stability, economic stability, and political stability. You've mentioned that the opposition is going to be as tough as it could be. And this is good and bad at the same time. And let me focus on the bad side. And the bad side, when we look to Sunday, of course, we don't expect to see other Sundays, like U2 songs, like Bloody Sundays, etc. We like to see, at least in a democratic environment, a tough, decent opposition. Although tough, can we expect to see that? Can we think we are going to see that? Or we are going to see worse than that? And if we are going to see worse than that, where are those three pillars are going to be as far as investment, domestic and mainly international investment in Brazil? My specific question goes to what is perhaps in the DNA of the Labour Party, trade unions. Under one former government, if I'm not mistaken, under Temer term, the trade unions compulsory tax was over. And this is not only, this is very, to me, it's a very important issue. Now, can we see a possibility of this tax to come back? And if so, what would be the implications of that?
Thank you very much for the question. We'll start by the second question. I think that there will be no possibility of return of this taxation, this tax imposed to syndical. I don't see it. Very difficult. The opposition would be enormous, and you don't see up to now. We are in the 13th day of the government. Until now, you haven't seen too much unionists occupying posts in the government, which is a good sign, contrary to what happened at the beginning of the first Lula's government. So, in terms of the trade union power, they will manage to get something because the Workers' Party is in power. They won the election with the support of others. They will have something. But I don't anticipate something very dramatic. In terms of the stability, political, economic, I try to mention it. It's too soon to answer that. Because you had what you had last week, on Sunday last, and this changed everything. So the focus now is the establishment of the stability, search for stability, political stability. I don't think we have a problem with juridical stability unless, as I mentioned, they try to change the regulatory framework. So I think that to invest in Brazil, the most successful companies that invested in Brazil, they took a medium long-term approach. So, and some of them, the most, the companies with the greatest success, they came to Brazil in crisis period. The problem for new investment in Brazil is that I have a consulting company in Brazil, and I help many companies from the States, from Europe. And I like to repeat right from the beginning, when I left Washington, I opened a consulting company in Brazil, and I keep repeating the bureaucracy in Brazil is huge. It's being gradually reduced, but the legislation is very complex. A medium-sized company, I'm not speaking about the largest corporations, but the medium-sized companies, which, as I said, there are enormous opportunities to do business in Brazil. The tactic thing is to join a Brazilian company, because the Brazilian company will know how to operate in the complex, in the middle of this complex legislation. But the overall picture I try to show here, I think it's too soon to reply to your question. We have to give some more weeks to see how the policy is going to be developed, how the relationship with the military, relationship with the opposition, relationship with the Congress, how this is going to evolve, to see if the government will have the capacity to rule, to govern. So I think you have to, but the objective, the business community, large part of the Congress, and big part of the government sticks exactly this stability. Because only the radicals don't want the stability. The business community in Brazil is concerned when they are with the vice talking. It's a good reference point. He is a moderate. He now is the Minister of Industry and Trade, and he may help to get as soon as possible this stability that everybody wants to prevail in Brazil.
More questions? Manuel?
Thank you, Cassio. Ambassador, you mentioned about one hypothesis that if the government does not do well with the military, that could have some kind of a consequence. So based on the past, because it's very hard to predict the future, right? But based on the past, where Brazil faced, military coping, etc., what could be the triggers to the situation getting worse? It could be something related to the government doing these statements like you just mentioned, or could be these riots. What could be a kind of a, based on your experiences and also other governments, that could be a trigger to get this worst scenario, okay? And the second question, specific one that also you mentioned, that is going to be Lula against the radical parts of the Works Party. But Lula is the Works Party, right? So who gets some more influence on Lula's, on the radical part? So we're talking about the José Dirceu part of people. So who can get this influence on Lula's, right? For him not to make the decision that he has to make as a president of Brazil.
The two questions have the same origin, as I mentioned. Will Lula control the Workers' Party? This is the big question. And I don't think that José Dirceu mentioned there is a result. The people that tries to influence Lula is the head of the party, Lazy Hoffman, and one or two other more ideological guys in the Workers' Party. But I don't think that they will prevail, because the center, as I said, the center democratic movement will have a bearing, will have an influence. Will make Lula more moderate. And in relation to the military, it's the same thing. If the Workers' Party prevail and most of the Minister of Defense is replaced, then we don't know what's going to happen. But what the behavior of the military during Bolsonaro's period was very complicated, because Bolsonaro politicized the military, and the military politicized politics. The politics was militarized. I don't think this exists in English. Anyway, it is. There was a mutual influence between politics and the military because of the action of the president. But even so, you perhaps you didn't follow this, but 2 years ago, on September the 7th, 2021, normally we would have big institutional problem because the president went in Brasilia and in Shutts Bowen and said the most terrible thing in relation to the judiciary, in relation to the Congress. And despite of the politicization of the armed forces, during the political activity of the military, you had 6,000 military occupying posts within the administration. Despite of this, there was not a single measure taken by the military against institutions. They were silent, they didn't say anything, they didn't respond to the demands of the president to do this, to do that. But I think that this is positive. The institution, the military as an institution, replied with no action, which in the case of Brazil, given the whole history, is a good sign. That's why I began saying that we have to discuss the control of the military by the civilian, because this is the case. But you have the same problem here. Otherwise, there's 8 secretaries of states and 5 joint of staff, chiefs of joint of staff couldn't write the letter. And there was also a statement by during Trump's, you remember the incident that happened in Russia. After that, there was a statement by the military saying that they wouldn't get involved in politics. So in Brazil, they didn't even say that. They didn't say anything, which is good. And now, with all the what happened last Sunday, there were military and families of the military demonstrating, and that's why they are cautious there. But they didn't prevent the government from taking measures to clear the situation. So I'm very concerned and following very closely this, but I'm not unless the Workers' Party prevails. I don't anticipate any. I don't know if that is a word in English, subordination from the military. I think they're going to stay there, respect the decisions. They may not back there are divisions, you know, there are divisions among the military because of the decisions of the Supreme Court in relation to rulers. But I don't anticipate any problem with the military, provided that rulers control the Workers' Party.
Ambassador Barbosa, very much enjoyed your presentation, Anthony Pereira from FIU. And one of the things that you made very clear, I think, is that the degree of Lula's control over the day is very important going forward. I wondered if you could flip that around and talk about the relationship between legitimate opposition and protesters, people on the street. Because it's not clear to me how much control politicians have over those protesters. You mentioned Vice President, former Vice President Odenbreit. They were very tough speech on the 31st of December, criticizing the Free Branch, saying that too much had fallen on the backs of the armed forces. But a lot of politicians say, well, Bolsonaro himself has said, I've been accused of being responsible for the bomb attempt. I have no responsibility for it. Anderson Torres is saying, I have no responsibility for what happened. So if the link between the legitimate opposition and protesters is not strong, because they don't control them, then politics could spin out of control, even if Lula gets a big coalition, gets lots of support from members of Congress, governors, and so on. So I was curious of what your view is of the relationship between politicians in the opposition and people in the streets.
It's the same situation as here in the States. The opposition to the government is the opposition to Europe. The bulk of the reaction against the government is in the business. We saw the list that the government released yesterday, a list of 59 people and companies that supported financially the movement in Brazil. All of them are members of the in the agribusiness area in Paraná, Mato Grosso, Pará. So it's very difficult to control this because the opposition to the government, as we saw last Sunday, comes from the business sector, very radical. The politicians stimulated some of the former Bolsonaro supporters have changed already, moderate, making statements against violence, against riots, against everything. But this, as I said, that's why I said that we have to wait a bit to see how the government is going to deal with agriculture. I didn't get into details here, but the Ministry of Agriculture was divided in three. You have Ministry of Agriculture, Minister for Agrarian Development, and the Minister of Fishing. So this will create tensions among them. The Minister of Agriculture is a producer. No, he knows that he's not a politician. He's a senator, a politician, but he comes from the agribusiness. He knows how to operate this. And I think that the government will try not to antagonize the agro community. And if they are successful, and this has to do with arms, which is one of the big priorities of the army, to have arms in the countryside, in farms, away from the police. And there are other, the question of money to crops, to help the crops production. So it depends. I think that in the coming months and years, the radical opposition will be isolated. Like here, you see that you have the radicals here, and you have rightist, moderate group of opposition to the government. I think that the problem is that there is no leadership. This is the big problem, because we don't know what is going to happen with Bolsonaro. He's still here in the States. Will he lead the moderate, or will he lead the radicals? Is he going to lead? Perhaps not. There's no conditions to lead anything. So we don't know who is going to lead this moderate right. Perhaps the governor of São Paulo, who was elected with Bolsonaro support, he has shown up to now in this beginning of his government as well, a moderate attitude. We'll see. This is too soon also to answer the question.
Yeah.
My question to you is in reference to trades and what is happening between Brazil and other countries, especially here in the US, since President Biden invited President Lula to be here in February, and he is supporting the presidency. What will be the big change in reference to trading and political affairs between Brazil and USA in reference to Lula and Bolsonaro? What are those different things?
I think I was ambassador in Washington for 3 years and a half with Cardoso, and 1 year and a half with Lula. Was Lula's ambassador in Washington, and nothing changed at the beginning of the government. In 2002, 2003, I left in 2004. Business as usual in terms of the relationship between Lula and Bush. I think that the relationship will not be personal as it was between Bolsonaro and Trump. This is over. The relationship will be institutional. And I don't think that the rhetoric of the State Department here, the Commerce Department here, will prevail. They are putting emphasis on the nearshoring, friendly shoring. I don't think that this will happen. This will happen with Mexico, with Canada, but not with Brazil. I see that US companies may have big say in Brazil if they go to Brazil to develop regional chains of productions based on Brazil with other countries, with Colombia, with Chile, with Argentina. This would be important because South America has 400 million people. And it's an important market. So we have to be the reality. I think that trade will increase. Last year, there was an increase in trade, as you know, both import and export. I think that the possibilities are very good. I think that medium-sized companies would have, in some areas, strategic areas, in pharmaceuticals, in imports for medicine and other areas. I think that there are huge opportunities for companies to develop business with Brazil. I'm not skeptical. I think that in the only thing that will agree entirely is environment. I don't think that Brazil will align itself with the United States in this big tension between the United States and China, for instance. I don't think. I defend the position that Brazil has to decide case by case, because nobody would deny that Brazil is a Western country. Values, democracy, interests, everything, we are Western. But today, the circumstances in which we are dependent on Asia. Over 50% of our exports go to Asia. 31% of the agro export goes to China. The United States cannot replace it. Europe cannot replace this influence, Asian influence. So we have to deal with this situation. We have interest in the Western world, and we have interest in Asia. And nobody will replace both. So Brazil, in my view, will not align itself if the United States asks, well, Brazil, we would like you to join our efforts against Russia, against China. Brazil will not going to join. I think Brazil will be in an independent position, defending our own interests, because we cannot. How Brazil could support sanctions against Russia if we depend 85% of the fertilizers from Russia? We cannot do that. The United States will not supply 85% of fertilizers to Brazil. No way. So we have to be realistic. And I think that the United States understands that. And now, as you know, we're going to have a new situation. We will have 2 women ambassadors. The US ambassador to Brazil is a woman. And according to the information we have, the new Brazilian ambassador will be a woman as well. So it's up to the woman to settle this question.
Questions that I have already completed the live, you person, not for you. So that's
Ambassador, thank you for everything you said today. It's been very clear and interesting. I'm a lawyer in town. I have a lot of Brazilian clients. And I have a client who used to speak so lovely of Bolsonaro. He gave me these speeches. And then I asked him, okay, so did you vote for him this time? He said, no, I voted for Lula. And then he gave me a speech about Lula. And then he explained to me a phenomenon. He said, Brazilians like stability. And if we feel it's going too far this way, we'll vote the other way. I don't know if he's right, but if he's right with that, that's a positive to show that, you know, people try to bring stability by saying, well, maybe I went too far here, I'll vote here this time. Do you agree with that? Do you think that the Brazilian voter can maybe not be as polarized as some of us may fear at this time that they may be?
No, I don't find that. I think that we are polarized. I think that the bulk of the support Lula got came from those who opposed Bolsonaro. And to a large extent, Bolsonaro had the support of people that were against Lula. They have 20% of Bolsonaro or Lula. The rest is people voting against him. The election in Brazil was a rejection of the election. You voted to reject one side, you voted to reject the other side. And the supporters of both political parties voted against their will. But Lula, the Workers' Party, has not more than 20% of the voters in Brazil. And Bolsonaro had no party. He joined a liberal party that is nothing. And because of the support of Bolsonaro, now they have nearly 199 members of the Brazilian Congress and the chamber. So you have support of Bolsonaro, support of Lula, but the bulk, the group that decided the election was those who voted against one and the other. And this is going to continue, I think.
Okay. Hi, Ambassador. Great morning here. My name is Ludmila, and I'm from Amazon Rainforest. My business also related here, and I'd like to have your opinion or your point of view about the new politics for the Amazon Rainforest now. Yeah.
No, I think I spoke very outspoken against the environment and climate change policy under Bolsonaro. In the first 2 years, in the second 2 years, this changed and was more moderate. I think that Lula changed completely this, and I hope that he will be successful. Because the problem in the Amazon is the illegality. It's not, we're not going to change the policy because of external pressure. We're going to change the policy because it's our interest. What foreign countries and foreign companies and NGOs are asking, according to my view, they are saying, look, you have to abide to your legislation. Because what is happening in the Amazon is the destruction of the forest by fires, by cutting trees, and by mining, illegal mining. It's, I can speak an hour about this. And today, the Amazon is a no man's land in large parts of it. You saw what's happening in Javali with the British journalist and the guy there. There was no power there. It is in an area that has 3 states, Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. And there's no state. So the problem that Brazil faces now is to regain control of its territory. Because it's not only the 3 illegal areas that I mentioned. You have transnational crime. You have contraband of arms, drugs. So it's crazy. It's crazy. The government, it's not only a political problem. I like to stress this. It's an economic problem because the evasion of taxation. You imagine how much Brazil is losing, the treasury is losing by these illegal activities because you explore, you minerals, whatever, and you forge documents, and you transfer the mineral from the interior of the Amazon up to the port. And you know that Brazil is today, Brazil is the largest gold exporter in the world. You know who buys it? Switzerland. Illegal. Everything illegal. So it is in the interest of everybody. And not only political interest, it is strategic interest. Now we're going to change the policy in relation to Venezuela as well. I think it's a good thing. I think that Brazil has to help Venezuela to become democrat again. The rule of law, free elections, human rights, respect. Brazil can help that. Why? I made a list of Brazilian interests in relation to Venezuela. No country, not even the United States, has so many interests with Venezuela than Brazil. You have over 1,000 kilometers border with Venezuela, no control. You have nearly 400,000 refugees from Venezuela to Brazil. You have arms dealings, transnational. Drugs dealings, I mean, you have strategic interests to protect the border with Venezuela, Colombia, Bolivia. You have to do something there. It's not possible. But it's important, you know, the Amazon is the size of Western Europe. But it's very difficult. Brazil is still a developing country. We don't have the resources to monitor the whole Europe. If the international community wants to help, and after the election, Lula's election, Germany started to put money again. Great Britain is studying to transfer resources to the Amazon Fund. Norway has already reopened. The money blocked at the BNDES has been released. So Lula said that he would convene a meeting of the Treaty of Amazon Corporation. You know that in the last 5 or 6 years, there's not a single meeting of this organization whose headquarters are in Brasilia. 9 countries are members of this organization. And Brazil bear the brunt of everything alone. It was a crazy what Bolsonaro did in relation to it. It was a crazy thing against our interests. Now, let's see, as I said, I'm a bit worried because there will be clashes between the Minister of Environment and the Minister of Agriculture and the business community there, because the business community in the Amazon, especially in the cattle required is complicated, but they are destroying the area there. So it's a huge task. But I think that now we hope that with the new policy, which is unanimous, and the foreign policy, like here, for environment and the climate change, is at the center of foreign policy. So it is, I hope that this will be one of the bright spots of the government, as I said, because there is national consensus. And another thing that is important you brought here, for the first time ever, the Amazon is in the national agenda, in the political, economic agenda. Never before. Now it is in the agenda. So something will happen. And the sooner the better.
Great, thank you, Ambassador. Before we finish, I'd like to thank you, Mary and Larissa, for the organization with Mark. Members, all of you, what I'd like to invite our Ambassador André to give a certificate of appreciation to our speaker of the day. Let's stay in front of her.
Thank you.
Let's be in front of the logo.
So then
Scenario.
Ambassador, on behalf of BACCF, many thanks for again offering us the opportunity of hearing you, a small certificate of appreciation, and again, for me personally, a great pleasure to see you again. Thank you.
Just one for Ohio, you have a.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone, thanks for coming. Now a picture section.
Good morning. Bom dia a todos. I have to say, I'm very excited to see everyone here in our offices at Shutts Bowen this morning. it's been a little while since we've had, you know, a big event like this here, and it's just wonderful to see so many familiar faces and new faces as well. And we're always happy to collaborate with the chamber. My name is Greta Trotman. I'm a partner here in our financial services group at Shutts Bowen. And you know, we're a full service law firm. Other of my colleagues are here, including Sabo Oliveira from our tax group.